Welcome, brave listeners, to Wilhelm Presents Frightening Tales. I'm your host, Wilhelm. Tune in each week where I entertain my listeners with another dark and creepy tale of the paranormal, donated by authors from around the world. If you are an author of some paranormal fiction and would like to share a story with my listeners, submit one at frighteningtales.com. And while you're there, tune in for more than 40 hours of previous content. Today's episode is written by Debbie Patterson, who makes her home in Scotland, where she lives with her partner and their traveling zoo worth of pets, which includes a senior dog, 2 cats, 2 turtles, and a grumpy talking catfish. Debbie enjoys reading, playing video games, and collecting, and of course, writing horror. She would like to share with us this tale she calls Housewarming. When I was a kitten, I used to sit on Mummy's shoulder. She would stroke my fur and groom me, while I'd groom her too. Ever since we moved house, something cold runs its fingers through my fur. A person-shaped shadow stood next to the front door and bowed low, its arm swept in a grand gesture. I could tell this was its home. We were its guests. The front door opened and closed. Anubis, dog Mummy as I knew her, was on her feet, and she tottered toward it. The living room door opened and dog Mummy went to Mummy and Daddy, wagging her tail in greeting. The shadow monster's fingers curled around the door, then pulled it shut. "Need to check the hinges on that door," Daddy remarked. Mummy nodded in agreement. Nothing smelt right, nor did it look right. The house was too cold, the smell of mold and damp clinging to the air. The rooms were too small and the wrong shape. Boxes and bags filled the living room, all waiting to be carried to their proper place. I didn't like it. My fur stood on end when a cold hand took hold of my tail and tugged on it. I spun around to see the shadow monster from the door, grinning at me, with only its yellow teeth showing. After a long day, Mommy and Daddy went to bed. Footsteps thudded from downstairs, and I went to investigate. The living room door didn't take much convincing to open. The shadow monster, now fully formed, sat on the couch, arms spread over the top of it. Its teeth were sharp, while long claws poked from its toes. It had no fur, only black skin. The smell of dirt clung to the air. It stood up, opened the kitchen door, and slammed it. Mummy came downstairs. She frowned. "You should be upstairs, Carmen," she said, picking me up. She knelt down to Dog Mummy and gave her ear a scratch. Dog Mummy smiled and leaned into it. From over her shoulder, the shadow monster opened the kitchen door and waved to me. Things started going wrong a few days later. During the night, Mummy woke up coughing and rushed to the bathroom. She vomited, then slumped to the floor with a thud. I scratched at the door and called for her, Something chuckled from the bottom of the stairs. I stood at the top of the stairs, staring at the shadow monster in the hall. "That's the least of what's going to happen to her," it crooned. I glanced at the door, then ran downstairs. My claws were out. I would not let it hurt Mummy. I swiped at the shadow monster as I hissed and growled. The bathroom door opened again, and Mummy groaned. "Carmen, where are you now?" she called. "Coming, Mummy." I glared at the shadow monster, still growling. Mummy was already back in bed when I got back to the bedroom. I hopped onto it, purring. She reached over and stroked my fur as she fell asleep. I was woken by thuds from the hall not long after. I headed out of the bedroom. The shadow monster marched up and down the stairs, then slipped into the spare bedroom. I followed. It hung from the ceiling like a spider and then dropped back onto the floor. Its legs were too big for its body, and it skidded into the hall, then righted itself. It stood in the doorway of the bedroom and smiled, its yellow teeth the only thing visible. The shadow monster kept following Mummy. It appeared over her shoulder, as well as Mummy being ill. I was ill too. After a few mouthfuls of my food, I felt sick and curled up on the bed. Mummy came to look for me. The shadow monster was behind her, and it imitated her. She reached for me, the monster copying her. "Come and see me," it said. Its voice was scratchy and choked now. I ran into the other room and squeezed myself under the chair. Something grabbed the tip of my tail before I pulled free and hid from everything. Everything except the monster. Mummy took me to the magic place that made everything feel better. My friends, the guinea cats, were never happy to go, however. It involved their nails being cut, something that scared Admiral Fuzzy Boots. When it came to me, however, the people in white clothes all fussed over me. They petted me, fed me, and reassured me when I woke up in a new place. I saw bars in front of me and I called for Mummy. One of the other people answered instead. She gave me food and then let me sleep. I was so tired. I took yucky medicine, but Mummy and Daddy told me I'd feel better for it. I trusted them, and after a few days, I felt like myself again. Afterwards, things got worse again. 2 of the guinea cats died. Admiral Fuzzy Boots was first. Then not long afterwards, Grandmaster Piggles. I sat beside their empty cages until Mummy moved Lieutenant Sniffles into the living room. When they died, the demon came out of the wall and hung over the bars, staring at them. Each time, the smell of dirt lingered. At night, I'd break into the living room to sit with Lieutenant Sniffles and Dog Mummy. Each time, the shadow monster sprawled on the couch. It stared at the ceiling, ignoring me. Sniffles noticed it too. He stayed in the middle of his cage, his teeth chattering all the while. I swished my tail from side to side. Sniffles sat beside me, sniffing at my fur through the bars. I turned and gave his nose a lick. The shadow monster leaned forward.
Such an interesting friendship,
it commented.
He's the only one left.
I hissed at it. It hissed back and dropped onto the floor. Limbs splayed outwards. It imitated a meow. It came out like hacking up a hairball, strained and tight. Its breath smelt bad, like wet food that had been left out for too long. It crept towards me. I swiped at it and cut its face. It wasn't going to hurt Mummy again, or any of my friends. The shadow monster reached up and touched its cheek. The blood came out black. It looked shiny and slick, reflecting off the light. It grinned its horrible grin. Yellow teeth stretched across its face. It slunk away to the kitchen and slammed the door behind it. The monster crept closer. It hung over Mummy's bed during the night as she slept. Mummy spent another night in the bathroom, coughing and vomiting. I waited outside for her, then waited till she got back into bed. There was a hiss before the wall rippled like water. The smell of burning filled my nose while it felt cold. Mummy's breath came out in little puffs. The monster pulled itself forward, claws first, then the rest of it. I sat on Mummy's chest and growled. I swiped at it. It grinned at me before it slid back into the wall. After another visit to the magic place, we stopped to visit Uncle. Uncle lived in a small flat that Daddy visited often, as did Mummy. Whenever they did, they were gone for what felt like years. Mummy carried me, though as we went outside I caught a glimpse of the monster in the back seat. The smell of dirt returned. I took to exploring the flat as Uncle made tea, wandering into the bathroom and bedroom. The monster sat on the bed. It turned its head to look at me.
You're here too?
It said.
What a lovely surprise.
It got up, walked out of the bedroom and into the living room. There it stood at the opposite wall, watching us. Neither Mummy, Daddy, nor Uncle saw it. I stared at it, my fur sticking up, my tail twice the size. Mummy frowned. Carmen, what's wrong? I let out a low growl. Mummy, it's here. It's here now with us. As we left, the demon waved goodbye. That night, the monster was suspiciously absent. Daddy let me sit on his legs all night, while Mummy let me watch my favorite games and help her hunt zombies. I sat on the top of the chair as the zombies got beat up on the large screen in front of me. I stood on my back legs and smacked the zombies along with Mummy. It was the most I'd seen her laugh and smile. I wanted it to stay like that. But the monster had other ideas. Days later, a man came to the house at nighttime. to tell Daddy that Uncle was dead. I rushed to Daddy, determined to comfort him. He sat on the couch, and there he stayed. Mummy sat with him, and in the days that followed, both Mummy and Daddy went to Uncle's flat for various reasons. While alone, the monster wandered the house. The smells were back: dirt, burning, and rotten food. It didn't seem to bother Dog Mummy. It walked past her without so much as a glance. She slept peacefully, running in her dream. The monster stood in front of the kitchen door.
"Oh, little feline," it said. "You think you can protect them? Save them. You are so very wrong and misguided."
Once more, I scratched the demon. It wouldn't hurt Mummy or Daddy. Oh, I'd make sure of it. The shadow monster retreated into the wall for the rest of the night. The shadow monster was closer still. It put its hands on Mummy's shoulders, its head resting on hers. Mummy sat on the couch while I curled up on my Daddy's legs. When she tried to stand up, she fell to the floor. I leapt from Daddy's legs and ran to Mummy. Daddy had his phone in his hand. He said, "I think she's had a stroke." The room was filled with a blue flashing light. Daddy tried to go with her as new people helped her to her feet. He clutched his phone and assured me he was talking to Mummy. I didn't sleep, nor did he. I stayed on the couch, waiting for him to tell me if Mummy was all right. The shadow monster danced from one foot to the other at the window, clapping its hands together. Mummy came back a few days later. The stroke was a mini one. She was ordered to take it easy by the human magic place. Mummy, unimpressed by this, insisted on rearranging rooms. She cooked big meals, helped carry a new fridge into the house. She wouldn't let me sit in it and inspect everything she bought, so I stopped talking to her. The shadow monster watched with interest. It stood behind her outside, its head tilted as she helped to heft the large object into the house. Within a few days, she helped Daddy carry a TV up the stairs. For me. The shadow monster hung in front of it, dangling from the ceiling like a spider. I shouted at it until Mummy came upstairs again. All of the monster's attention was taken up by her, and it dropped down to the floor, scurrying towards her. I ran too. I jumped onto Mummy's shoulder and glared at it from there. Mummy frowned and looked around the room, checking the cupboard and behind the curtains. When she found nothing, she petted my head and sat on the bed. The shadow monster slunk away. Something's wrong with Mummy. Irritable and short-tempered, she locked herself away in the bedroom after shouting at Daddy. They argued for a long time, and I stayed out of the way. "Mummy, what's wrong? I'm sure I can help." She didn't want my help. She didn't want anyone's. She remained isolated, snapping at anyone who came near her. In the few times I got close, Mommy had yellow teeth. It was only then I noticed the shadow monster wasn't following her anymore, and the smell of dirt, burning, and rotten food filled the house.
Thank you, brave listeners, for joining me on another dark story. I urge all my listeners to go out and find more content by our weekly author, if you're not too timid. If you enjoyed today's story and you've tuned in on YouTube, please click the like button. And if you don't want to miss future stories, click the subscribe button. If you were present today on Spotify and enjoyed the story, you're welcome to leave a comment. And if you're on an Apple podcast, please leave the show a rating as you see fit. All these little things seem to add up. Wherever you are, please do me a favor and share today's story if you can. Then tune in next week for another frightening tale, if you're brave enough.